All right, welcome to Questionable Calls. It's Sunday, little almost 4:30 Eastern time. Um, just watched a really disappointing Dolphins loss. They go out to Baltimore and get thrashed by the Ravens. Um, you know, so yeah, we'll talk a lot about that, and then we got to talk about we're going to talk about some NFL stuff because we're getting down to we're in week second to last week of the season, and it's getting interesting. Got to see what's going to happen, and then we got some thoughts on Russell Wilson, and some thoughts on the college football semifinals tomorrow. So, all right, Clark, let's start with our team routinely disappointing us. What's your first impression on the Dolphins getting beat by 37?
Uh, I'm I'm not surprised. I've basically come to expect this when the Dolphins play really good teams, and the Ravens are clearly a really good team. They, we've talked about Tua a lot over the years that he's been in Miami, and it's the same kind of stuff, right? I mean, he throws a lot of stuff over the middle. You know, he takes some chances on some deep shots, and with varying results. Sometimes it's, there's been plenty of games this season where he's had some really good deep shots. And I mean, in this game, you know, that wasn't necessarily a problem. I mean, he was trying to make plays when they were down by a bunch. But, the Ravens kind of take away the middle, and the Dolphins, their offensive line wasn't doing the best job protecting Tua. I mean, one of the things that was really disappointing is the game got so out of hand, yet Devon Achane was running all over the place, but they couldn't keep running the ball because they were down by so much. So that was disappointing. That Miami's defensive line, which I've had questions about for a while, they could not get any pressure on Lamar Jackson. He had all day to throw. I mean, and the funny thing is people think, well, the problem with Lamar is, when he gets out of the pocket and whatever. Yeah, he did that a little bit today. He didn't need to. I mean, he wasn't rushed really at all. And then the Dolphins secondary, they had a long pass play that I don't know what the hell was going on with the corner and the safety. There was some confusion there. And they just got, I mean, and then you go to Tua throwing, he threw 2 interceptions. I mean, basically the Ravens, they took away the middle of the field. That first interception, that's what happened. He's usually there's space out there in the middle of the field. He threw it there and the guy just jumped in front of it and, intercepted it. And then the other one, I don't know why the hell he was throwing that. That kind of speaks to, we've had questions about how well does Tua read defenses? Is he just throwing the ball? Is he just like dropping back, planting his foot and throwing? And that's one of those plays that makes it look like, yeah, that's what he's doing. And when it works, it's great. But when it doesn't, that's what you get. So I'm kind of disappointed, but I'm kind of disappointed in myself because I got a little ahead of myself thinking, oh, yeah, the Dolphins could get the 1 seed and they could. I mean, at this point, I don't even think we'll get to them, whether they can win the division or not. But I mean, just this game in particular, it's just kind of is what it is. This is what I expect when they play good teams. Like they can't really compete with them. I'm still questioning the defense in terms of being able to rush the quarterback. Xavier Howard got injured, but it's not like he has been playing all that well this year. So yeah, those are just kind of, I know I'm rambling. Those are just kind of my general thoughts after just watching the game.
Yeah, listen, it's disappointing for them to get blown out. I thought they could be reasonably competitive in this game. I knew if Baltimore played their best, that the Dolphins were not going to beat them. But yeah, and the pass rush is one thing, but the Dolphins didn't cover anybody. I mean, they're running, the first half there were 3 or 4 plays, they're just running wide open down the field. It's like, I mean, it doesn't really matter if you're rushing the quarterback at all, if guys are just running wide open because Lamar's going to hit him. And I texted you this during the game, like Tua's claim to fame is that he's like this super accurate quarterback. And meanwhile, I'm watching and Lamar Jackson is significantly better than him. It's not like it's, oh, well, the quarterback who was accurate today was Lamar Jackson, who, by the way, has been questioned about his accuracy a lot. So I just, and I think where I've come to with Tua is, yeah, if it's perfect, like he's got a chance to be pretty good. And, as well as completion percentage really high. Tua's completion percentage has to be really high because he's got no other moves. The only thing he has going for him is his accuracy, and accuracy can only get you so far, unless you're perfect. So,
Right.
so yeah, it's disappointing the defense played as bad as they did, and it just brings into question everything the Dolphins have done this season. They haven't really beaten a good team. The Dallas win last week is their claim to fame when they scored 22 points and had to kick 350-plus yard field goals to win the game. So that's supposed to be their impressive win, and the offense just looks. I said it, I think I wrote it down. I mean, the Dolphins are a defensive team now. Like, that's what they are. The offense is, we're hoping we can squeeze out enough points to make the game competitive, and hopefully the defense will play like they had been playing up to this week. But look, there's no shame in losing to the Ravens. They're a really good team. I get it, but the performance today by the Dolphins was really a disaster. Like, you had plenty of time to work on this. You had enough guys healthy, and not only do they lose the game, Xavier Howard gets carted off the field, Bradley Chubb gets carted off the field, and Tua gets injured trying to slide on a play where he's running, which, I mean, I don't know why Tua is still in the game. When we're down by 23 with 8 minutes to go, I have no idea what Mike McDaniel's doing. Like, and honestly, you can see it watching these games as a fan. Once Tua doesn't have it anymore, it's done. Like, once he threw the second pick, you might as well just pull him, because he doesn't have, if he doesn't have it today, he doesn't have it. He's like a relief pitcher when you bring him in. Like, if he's got it going, okay, but once it's gone, it's gone. So anyway,
I'll say this: everyone talks about the Dolphins' offense. Oh, it's so explosive. The Ravens' offense appears to be just as explosive. The Dolphins have all this speed. The Ravens got plenty of speed. And then you combine that with how well their offensive line plays and how they can run the ball, not running off tackle and toward the sideline, running right at you. And also with Lamar Jackson, which Lamar didn't even really run that much today. So that's another aspect of their game that's always there. So yeah, the Dolphins are not. I think people get the idea the Dolphins are close. No, they're not close. Their offensive line is still a work in progress. They can't really run right at you. Their defense, the pass rush has been okay. And again, this is the eye test. I'm not talking about whatever stats you have on their pass rush, but their secondary, it's okay. Like, they're not close. They're a ways to go, especially when you have a quarterback like Tua who's limited and who can't really rise to the way, and in a game like this, you need to rise up to the way Lamar is playing. And Tua does not have the capacity to do that. This is his fourth year. The interceptions that we see are the same kind of interceptions we've always seen since he's been in the league. So this is just this is what Tua is. And this is kind of what the Dolphins are. They need to improve significantly on their offensive line and on their defense.
Yeah, the Tua's got to have a perfect roster around him to do anything. And I think if, like I've said, I've been saying earlier this season, if Tua played for San Francisco, I think we'd be talking about him for the MVP, because he'd be putting up unbelievable numbers on a great team. I just think my criticism of Tua has always been the same. He couldn't beat good teams in college. He can't beat good teams in the NFL. And so, the Dolphins are not close to, as far as elite teams go, the Dolphins are not close to an elite team. The reason that the Dolphins were so interesting this year and had a chance is because this year's kind of a crapshoot. And so you've got a lot of teams with a lot of issues. And so, let's talk. I mean, Clark, where are you at with the Buffalo game next week? Because I think,
just so everybody knows, I don't think it's been announced yet, but we're sort of assuming that the Buffalo-Miami game is going to get flexed to Sunday night. Right. So when the Dolphins lose the division, it can be nationally televised, so a bunch of people across the country can watch the Dolphins season just, go up in flames. So yeah, thank you, NFL. I'm really, again, when we did the sports grievances, the last podcast, I told you I didn't like flex scheduling NFL games. Well, this is one of the reasons why, because if your team gets put on there and you come out and you play like shit, then yeah, the whole country gets to see your team and laugh at you. So,
right.
Okay, beyond that, just for people, and we've been talking about this for weeks now. Okay, guys, Dolphins fans and also national sports media. Next week is for the AFC East. Okay, whoever wins the game, the Dolphins are playing the Bills. Whoever wins the game wins the AFC East. So all you people who thought, oh, the Bills aren't going to make the playoffs, and you weren't even thinking about them winning the division, well, guess what? It's here. All the Bills got to do is win this game.
Not only that, Clark, the game is for the number 2 seed.
Right.
So, it not only is Buffalo going to get in, they're going to get possibly multiple home games in the playoffs. So,
right.
So, it's it's funny, let's moving on. I mean, look, I don't like, listen, I think the Dolphins can beat Buffalo, sure, because Buffalo is all over the place. But I don't look at this game as, well, if the Dolphins play well, they'll win. To me, it just comes down to Buffalo. If Buffalo does what they're supposed to do, they will win because they just have more talent. They have more talent at the key positions, and the Dolphins defense has never been able to stop Josh Allen. It's just a bad matchup for them. They just can't. There's nothing they can do. They don't have fast enough players on defense to slow him down, and so that's what it's going to be.
Well,
so,
and Bradley Chubb is probably out now. I mean, it looked like he suffered a pretty serious injury, so that's a huge blow to their defense. Jalen Waddle, he's got a high ankle sprain. We'll see.
Right.
And I just, is this game going to get out of hand like it did earlier in the season? Possibly. I mean, because I don't see how the Dolphins are going to slow down the Bills. And then again, as I was just talking about, I don't think the Dolphins Tua can rise up to the level that he needs to be in a shootout with the Bills right now. I just don't see it.
And Buffalo,
go ahead.
Buffalo's one of the teams that knows how to play the Dolphins, knows how to play their offense. They know what they're doing. And if Jalen Waddle's out, then, I mean, honestly, you just double team Tyreek Hill. You basically take away, half of the Dolphins offense right there. And, and that's the thing, like you made a good point. The Dolphins ran the ball well today. If they could have hung in the game a little bit longer, maybe it would have been interesting. But once it got out of hand, that was it. And so I don't feel good about the Dolphins winning. And so, as we talked about, Clark, you and I, we talked about this. The Dolphins lost that Titans game a few weeks ago. And if they'd have won that game, they had a 14-point lead with 4 minutes to go. If they won that game, they'd have the division clinched and we wouldn't have to worry about it. We could basically rest this week.
Yep.
But because of that, now it's down to this for the season. And, hopefully Tua is not seriously injure his shoulder by sliding. But, it's typical Dolphins, Clark. It's typical, the last 25 years. This is what happens. The Dolphin fans get excited. They think we're better than we are. And this is what it is. Like, the Dolphins are kind of an average team.
Yeah, for fans and for also, I don't know, people like on the Dan Le Batard show who just, especially Dan Le Batard himself talking about the Dolphins. Like, guys, this is why, and you can call us cynical or, whatever you want to say about when we're talking about the Dolphins, but I'm just reacting to what I'm watching and what I've been watching for the last few years. Like, what do you want me to say? And it's like, oh, well, the Patriots had the AFC East for years, so you can springboard from that and you can get to the Super Bowl. And it's like, yeah, but they don't beat good teams. Well, you're just beating who's in front of you. Yeah, but they don't beat good teams. Who do you think they're going to play in the playoffs?
Right.
What happens when they play good teams? They lose. And a lot of times they don't just lose, they get their asses kicked. Or they get their asses kicked, or their offense just can't do anything. So I don't understand why I'm supposed to be, oh, well, you're just not watching it right, or you're supposed to be more confident in them. Well, do you want me to just be a fanboy, or do you want me to be realistic about what I'm watching and what I've been watching?
Well, let's look at it this way, Clark. So the Dolphins, if they lose to Buffalo, right, they won 11 games this year. Okay, the Dolphins had the easiest at this point, which is how the best way to calculate it, not before the season, but the Dolphins have the lowest strength of schedule. They had the easiest schedule in the league. Okay, so how is winning 11 games this year any better than winning 9 games last year? Like, I don't see where I don't see a path to improvement. And if let's say hopefully they'll beat Buffalo. We'll see what happens. But if they lose to Buffalo, I don't see them going on the road and beating somebody. So it's just it's a rough way to go. And I know everybody, we sound like haters. We sound like we just don't like anything they do, and that's not true. I've liked a lot of things they've done, but and we'll talk about we can do the postmortem
Yeah, well, and
for
real
the
quick,
season.
so I'll just say, I've seen people doing power rankings and stuff throughout the season, and like Nick Wright on First Things First does the Nick's tiers, and he constantly put the Dolphins in a tier of these are teams that the Dolphins are a team that absolutely can make the AFC Championship game or make the Super Bowl, and I'm like, absolutely, really? Are you? And again, you may be thinking I'm saying this because I'm just a jaded Dolphins fan, and that's probably at least part of it, but how can you not watch this team and just go, oh yeah? How can you watch the team and go, oh yeah, they're going to beat multiple good teams in the playoffs, possibly one of them on the road? Yeah, right, they're going to do that. I mean, what are you watching? Of course, I guess I shouldn't really be that surprised. I mean, Nick Wright picked the Cowboys to go to the Super Bowl, so anyway.
Yeah. So all right. So jumping on to some other games to talk about. Let's I mean, my overall statement is, Clark, the NFL is really and I thought of this last week. The NFL is kind of a crapshoot right now. Like, there's not really I think Baltimore and San Francisco are probably the two best teams.
Yeah.
But it's not really there's not a huge gap, and I feel like there's a lot of teams that could get into the playoffs and win a playoff game. I just don't think there's a lot of teams that can win 3 straight playoff games. And so, the Ravens are in really good shape because they'd only have to win 2 playoff games to get to the Super Bowl, and they both be at home. So that's a pretty good. Same thing with San Francisco. That's a pretty good position to be in. So yeah, it's kind of like we'll see what happens the last couple of weeks here, but I think a team could get hot and get to the Super Bowl. Absolutely, I don't see any reason why that couldn't be the case. But so the Cowboys beat the Detroit Lions last night, which was crazy because there were 800 yards of offense and the score was 20-19, which has got to be some kind of NFL anomaly. But I was watching. I mean, it was just, first of all, it's a typical Cowboys game, Clark, where you feel like you're watching it and you feel like, boy, this score doesn't seem like it's right. You know what I mean? Because it felt like the Cowboys were moving the ball up and down the field. They get the first touchdown and then they fumble the ball out of the end zone on the second one, and it seemed like it was 7-3 forever. And I'm just watching. The Lions are going for it on 4th downs, and not taking 3 points when they had the opportunity. So, which ended up costing them later, right? As we say, Clark, it always does. But so I wanted your take on this. So Detroit, they score the touchdown to get within a point, and then they decide, all right, we're going to go for 2. Right? They go for 2 and they get it. It looks like they get it anyway. They throw a pass to an offensive lineman, to their left tackle, and I guess he did not declare eligible or whatever. So you want to complain about referees, Clark, for like a good 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, good, they won, blah blah blah. And it's like, oh no, wait a minute. It's like, so the referees needed the Cowboys to tell them that, oh, by the way, that guy didn't report as eligible. So it's just like, this is like a perfect example, Clark, of what you've been talking about, where it's just like some dumbass rule. Like, really? Like, this is what we're going to do? We're going to decide the game because the guy didn't declare as eligible for whatever it is. Like, honestly, what are we doing? So they don't get the 2-point conversion. They're like, all right, so they get a penalty that moves them back. They're like, all right, we're going to go for it anyway. Then the Cowboys jump off sides because that's the Cowboys, right? Can't let a play go by without screwing some shit up. They move back, they're at the 4-yard line. They go for the 2 points again. The guy's open, and Jared Goff just doesn't hit him. So they lose the game. So, and then everybody, of course, is ripping Detroit. How could you be so stupid? Kick the point, or, take the extra point. What's the matter with you? Blah, 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 blah. It's like, you guys all loved it 10 minutes ago when they scored on the 2-point conversion, didn't you? So, yeah, I thought once they didn't get it from the 2-yard line, I thought they probably should have taken the extra point, because how many 2-point plays do you have that are going to work in a game? Teams don't have 3-4 2-point plays that are going to work. So I thought that once they got moved back, they should have kicked the extra point. But honestly, I'm not gonna criticize that decision too much, because they went for the 2 and they got it. Like, he's like, all right, we're gonna go for the win. And I get the attitude. I would criticize them for what happened earlier in the game, where they didn't take the 3 points when they should have had. They could have easily had it, and so that came back to bite them. I understand them going forward, and honestly, Like if the stupid tackle had done what he's supposed to do, like they would have won the game. So I just wanted,
Right.
what was your take on that?
Okay, well, the other context we need to point out is the Cowboys had the ball, and then Dak threw a pass out of bounds, so they could have ran off more clock. So the Lions had plenty of time to drive right down the field, which they did. They drove right down the field, like bang, 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 bang. They're right there, touchdown. Okay, now so that's a clock management issue with Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy, which ad nauseum, we've been saying that forever.
And I wanted to point that out, Clark. Like the Cowboys have the ball, right? And then they run it a couple. Well, the series before the last series, right? Where it's like, okay, whatever. They ran the ball a couple of times, whatever. And Jason McIntyre from the Colin Cowherd show is on Twitter going, how can you be conservative there? Jesus, McCarthy, you deserve to lose this game, blah, blah, blah. So then they get on the next series, they're like, all right, we're going to throw it. They complete the first pass. Okay, good. He throws the second pass out of bounds, which just hands Detroit another 40 seconds. If you just run the ball 3 times there, you're really likely to win the game. And they never would. And by the way, if they had just not thrown that stupid pass, then Detroit never has enough time to get the touchdown there. So, I just want to point out that like we get into all this analytics crap and everybody goes crazy about it again, but it costs both teams in this game. They cost Detroit because if they would have kicked, if they had an extra 3 points, or they actually had an opportunity to get a field goal earlier in the game and Jared Goff took a sack. Like if they just execute a little bit better on those things, grab 3 or 6 points or whatever it is, then they win the game anyway. And Dallas, with terrible clock management, allows themselves. It's such a typical Dallas game. Like they were moving the ball up and down the field. CeeDee Lamb had like a record number of yards receiving in the game. Like they should have won that game easily, but of course they almost find a way to lose and somehow sneak out of it. So it's just, oh my god, it's so typical Cowboys.
Well, so with the going for 2. So, okay, yeah, like you, I'm basically like, look, I support going for 2 there to try to basically essentially win the game. I mean, because that's essentially right. You do that, you convert it, you probably win the game there. And I'm all for it. Like if you have one play that can basically win the game, why not try it? I mean, especially if you feel like you got a good play, and they did have a good play. They did. Apparently, I don't know if they did or not, but I guess they didn't declare. The offensive lineman didn't declare as eligible. So I totally supported that. Even if they didn't get it, I get it. Because if you go to overtime, maybe you don't win the coin toss, whatever. Okay. But usually that's a gamble where if you don't get it, it's over. But in this case, you got bailed out because they did the call, then they back you up. So you could have kicked the extra point there. And now you're at like the 7-yard line. They should have taken the extra point there. Okay. And the thing that I was thinking about this morning, this like came to me. I was like, okay, we talk a lot about, well, what do you need to do to win the game? Okay, well, how do you want to lose games? Think about it this way, okay? Like, there's more preferable ways to lose. Some ways of losing are more preferable than others, okay?
Right.
Do you want to lose in regulation trying to get a 2-point conversion from the 7-yard line or from like the 4-yard line? Or would you rather lose, tie game, it goes into overtime, and you lose the coin toss, they go down and score a touchdown? Would you rather lose that way, or would you rather lose trying to convert us, get into the end zone from 7 yards out? I would rather lose in overtime, okay? Because there's lots of different things that could happen in overtime. That maybe something goes your way. Maybe somebody fumbles the ball. Maybe you get an interception. Maybe you stop them. Your defense has a chance to stop them. Maybe you stop them in the first possession of overtime. You get the ball, you go down, kick a field goal, win the game. So yeah, I didn't think he should have kept going for it. That to me felt like a really overly emotional decision by Dan Campbell. He should have just taken the extra point and been like, all right, we'll stop them. They get the ball back. They're not going to be able to do anything with it. And then we'll see what happens in overtime. Also, especially were they at home? No, they were on the road. Also, you're on the road. So, I feel like when you're on the road, you know what? I don't think you should. You were aggressive there, but don't be too overly aggressive. And then also, look, the field goal, I was watching the game. They decided to, and it was like the 4th down that they went for where they could have kicked the short field goal. It was like, it wasn't 4th and 1. It was like 4th and 4 or something. Yeah. Right? 4th and 3, 4th and 4, 4th and 5, whatever it was. Like, what do you do? Just take and the game was 7-3 at that point. Why not just kick the field goal? You're only down by 1 point.
I was I was thinking, like, Clark, this is a crazy game. This is kind of weird. Like, this is going to be wild. So take the 3 points, because the way this is going, there should have been so many more points scored, but there weren't. So it's like, you know what? Take the points here, because I don't know about this game. Like, this is not, points don't seem to be easy to come by, because everybody was trying to score, but they just couldn't get it in.
Yeah, I don't get I mean, what I don't understand is whenever you have a chance to kick a field goal to tie the game, be down by 1 point, 1 or 2 points, or kick a field goal to take the lead, why wouldn't you just do it? Like, fuck the analytics. I don't care about that. Like, if I have a chance to tie the game, get really close, or just take the lead, even if it's only a few points, so what? Just kick the field goal. What's the problem?
Well, and the other thing is, Clark, a lot of these analytics, like every time that ESPN Analytics says go for it, okay, so they're doing it based on what's your projection to win the game, based on this call in the second, third quarter, whatever it is, right? So, okay, but we don't know, but they're not telling us what the difference is, right? So it could be you have a 4% better chance to win the game if you go for it here. Okay, that's in a single game, that is totally insignificant. Whatever percentages you're giving me over a huge sample size mean jack shit in one game. They don't mean a damn thing. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. It's like we get too caught up in this nonsense. Just do what's smart there. And the smart thing for the Cowboys to do was to keep running the ball, to use up the clock. And the smart thing for Detroit was to do was just, if you'd have taken points earlier in the game. But I see a lot of people like ripping Dan Campbell for it. And I'm like, that wasn't that bad a decision. Like, I don't agree. Like, I wouldn't have done it, but I don't think it's like the worst thing ever going for 2 there at the end of the game, even when you're back to, I don't think it's that bad a decision. It's not preferable at that point, because I feel like once you made one and it got called back, your likelihood of making 2-point conversions in a row is pretty low. Yeah. So at that point, yeah, I think you probably.
Did you point this out, or was this somebody else? Like, how many 2-point plays do you have?
Right.
Like, there's only, I mean, they had one that would have worked. It's just there was a technical issue with it.
One of them, Troy Aikman or Joe Buck, said it during the game. They said it. They're like, I don't know how many 2-point plays you have, because when they're trying the third one, it's like, because remember the first one that they were gonna run, Dallas called timeout because Laporta was going to be wide open on the motion. So they called timeout. Then they ran the play that worked. It got called back, right? Then they ran another play, but Dallas was offsides. So you don't have 4 2-point conversion plays that are going to work. So anyway, but we'll move on. I feel like, it really sucks for Detroit. Like, I feel like they should have had that game, and somehow
and Dallas. This is why we don't believe in you. Okay, this is why. This is a prime example of why we're just like, yeah, I'm not buying into the Cowboys. And I'm gonna say, look, I said it before the season. They're not going to the Super Bowl, and I'll say it right now. They're not going to the NFC Championship game. Period. Okay. Period. Mark it down.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I was listening, like, Colin Cowherd after the game was like, yeah, I believe in Detroit more than Dallas, but neither one of these teams is going to the Super Bowl. I mean, come on. What did we just watch? Like, honestly, you're not going to the Super Bowl like that. Neither one of these teams, honestly. Yeah. And I like Detroit. I'm not bashing Detroit. Like, but to me, like, Detroit, like, they just need another draft and to help their defense. They just need more good players on defense. That's their only major issue. Dallas, I believe it's just a personality thing. I don't think it matters. You saw how Dak played. I mean, that was a really bad interception, especially in the first half. And so that's
the funny thing with Dak. That was a really bad interception. But the drive to get them up 20 to whatever it was, 20 to 10 or whatever.
13.
He made some really good throws on that drive, But that interception earlier was bad, and then the last drive you throw the ball out of bounds. It's like, it's just like, you get some of this is good and then some of this is bad. 2 steps forward, 1 step back,
Yep. Yeah, and I just the Cowboys don't have their shit together. So, all right, so let's move on to my next topic here. So, Clark, that's the thing, Clark. I'm asking the question: who can win 3 playoff games? Because I'm looking at the teams. I'm going down the list here. I mean, look, we're going to take Baltimore and San Francisco out of it, okay? Because first of all, they don't have to win 3 playoff games to get to the Super Bowl. They only have to win 2. So those 2 teams to me if you put a gun to my head, that's who I would say is going to win. Do I feel great about it? No. Like, I don't feel awesome. We've seen San Francisco has some weaknesses, and if they get behind, they're in trouble. Baltimore, I think it's partly health. Because they've lost so many guys. Do they have enough guys now, and can they stay healthy long enough to get there?
Right.
And then we'll see. I feel like the Ravens do give up some stuff on defense, but you've got to be pretty good on offense too. So I feel like Baltimore's in the best position, but I'm not 100% in on it because neither one of those teams is great. All right, so AFC, Clark. I'm just going to go through the teams and then I'll let you chime in on it.
Okay.
Kansas City, no fucking way.
Nope.
They're not winning 3 playoff games, okay?
No,
they can
they're not
barely
going to the
score
Super Bowl.
They can barely score 20 points even against bad teams. Okay? I don't know. Everyone's telling and the other thing is everyone's telling me their defense is great. Their defense is okay. It's not great. It's like the Cowboys defense. Everyone's telling me it's great. I'm watching. It's not great. So I don't think and by the way, not only is it not great, it's not good enough to carry you to win playoff games. That's the bottom line. Like, yeah, their defense is fine. It has some good players on it, but it's not good enough to win games for you.
If they get into a game with the Ravens and, the Ravens offensive line is pushing them around, good night. It's over. They're going to run the ball. They'll run the ball down your throat. Lamar will make some plays and it's over. So I don't see any way that they're, and also just them against like Cleveland. I've been chiming in on Cleveland forever. The Bills just beat them. Okay, so I could see that, and then I'm trying to think of who. The Dolphins. We don't need to get into that. We've already kind of established that we don't think they're going to go very far in the playoffs, even if they do.
Well, by the way, I don't think they're going to go very far. Could they beat Kansas City in a playoff game? Sure.
Maybe. Yeah.
Miami could beat them because
if they're not going to get blown out by Kansas City, then you'll be in the game.
Right. Kansas City's not going to score 20 points. So if they can't do that, then they're up for losing to anybody. So yeah, I just think the Chiefs' problems on offense are not going to be solved in the next few weeks. They could be solved in the offseason, but they're not going to be solved this season. Buffalo is they're all over the place. Buffalo has the ability to play really well. They also have the ability to lose to the Jets and the Patriots. So, even today's game, like they were asking to get beat. It's just Bailey Zappi can't do anything, in the fourth quarter to beat them. Right. So yeah, Buffalo, Buffalo can play really well, but they can also just eat shit and die. So there's no way. They might win a game because Josh Allen will go off or something, but there's no way they're winning 3 straight games. We already talked about Miami. Miami's all over the place on offense, and if their defense is not going to play well, which I'm not going to go crazy about the defense. They played the Ravens, whatever. I'm not going to go nuts about it. But if Miami's defense doesn't play well, they won't beat anybody.
And then we got the AFC South. Who's going to win? Who could win that?
So the story with that is Jacksonville, Houston, and Indianapolis are all tied at 9-7. If Jacksonville wins, they will win the division. If they lose, Houston and Indianapolis play each other. So if Jacksonville loses, then the win.
Oh wow, okay. Who does Jacksonville play?
I did.
Oh, okay, that's all right. Well,
Tennessee, because they're all division games last week of the season. So Jacksonville's playing Tennessee. So yeah, so that division's a crapshoot. You believe in any of those teams? I don't believe in Jacksonville. Jacksonville's lost 4 in a row, and we don't even know if Trevor Lawrence is coming back. So he, sprained AC joint in his shoulder. So and he had the high ankle sprain before that. I don't know that Trevor Lawrence, even if he comes back, I don't know how good he's going to be. So you can't bet on. I don't know how any of those teams none of those teams are going to win 3 playoff games for sure. Cleveland, I just don't buy they're going to win 3 playoff games with a 38-year-old backup quarterback. Nothing against Joe Flacco. He's played really well. I'm not against it, but Cleveland's defense. I mean, if you want to talk about what's the best unit in the AFC, I mean, it's probably the Ravens offense, but the Cleveland defense is up there. So if Cleveland gets to play the AFC South winner, right? They get to play Jacksonville, Houston, or Indianapolis, right? I feel good about them winning that game. And then who knows if Buffalo's the 2 seed and Cleveland goes to Buffalo? I don't know. But anyway, yeah. So I just don't think they can win 3 games that way. They could definitely win 1, but Flacco's thrown some touchdowns. He's also thrown a lot of interceptions. So those kind of things can cost you when it comes down to playoff games. I'm not going to go into. I mean, I guess Houston or Indianapolis, whichever team wins the game, could still make the playoffs as a wild card. I'm not really buying into them. I mean, we
Oh,
certainly
okay. Yeah.
don't believe in Pittsburgh. So
Yeah.
none of
No, I
these.
mean Houston, they have some bad injuries, and they're like, they're just putting everything back together after being horrible for the last few years. So yeah, you can't really expect anything out of them. Indianapolis, I mean, you know, the fact that they're at this point is just a credit to their coaching staff, and they've continued to play well, but they're not going anywhere.
And listen, I don't love Buffalo, but if you
No,
told me Buffalo's in the AFC Championship game, I wouldn't be surprised.
yeah,
Like
no,
honestly, you look at the teams, and it's like who's like, you know what, Buffalo can't beat them. I mean, maybe they can't beat Baltimore, but they beat just about everybody else. So I would be surprised if Buffalo won 2 playoff games. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't be the craziest thing ever. But I don't expect it. I'll put it that way. I don't expect them to do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. In the NFC, I mean, I think the 49ers are the best team. I mean, I just think the 49ers got beat by Baltimore, but that's the only team who could do that to San Francisco. San Francisco blew out Philadelphia, and Philadelphia looks terrible. And they blew out Dallas, and we just watched the last 2 games with Dallas. I'm not buying into that nonsense, and I'm not buying into Detroit. I just don't think there's anybody in the NFC that can even hold a candle to the 49ers. I
yeah.
just
I mean,
think
I don't like, for instance, the Rams. Maybe they're like the 7 seed or something, and like they're not going to be able to play with San Francisco. Their defense is not very good. So yeah, that's not really the Eagles, the Cowboys. Who else? Let's see, the NFC.
so.
Who the
I mean,
hell's going to win the NFC South?
well, it might be the New Orleans because they beat Tampa today.
Oh
So
well,
I
yeah, I
think
don't buy New Orleans at all.
right. I think they're in the driver's
I
seat.
don't buy Tampa either, but
Right. I think New Orleans is in the driver's seat to win that division. So yeah, I think the 49ers are I just think that's a jug. I don't think anybody's really beating them. Dallas, we already talked about. They don't have their shit together. They're going to screw it up somehow. Even if they play well, they'll make some dumbass they'll do some dumbass things to screw it up. They just will. Detroit just can't. The Detroit and Philadelphia, same thing. Defense. Their defenses just aren't any good. They're not any good. They're just not good enough to stop people, and that will eventually be their undoing. Philadelphia can put up some points, but when you're giving up 35 points to Arizona today, you're just not going to be able to stop anybody, and that's going to be the end of it. The Rams are interesting. Granted, they almost lost to the Giants today, but the Rams are interesting because they could definitely win a playoff game. They could go to one of these places and win because they have a good quarterback. They got a coach that knows what he's doing. Like, but can they do it 3 times?
Could go to Dallas and win.
Right. But could they do it 3 times? No fucking way.
No, they're not doing it 3 times. So they can go win a game.
So I mean, Clark, are we just down to we think Baltimore and San Francisco? Is it just kind of like, I mean, it's not inevitable, right? Because we know they have problems.
No.
We know they have problems.
It's just Baltimore struggled in the playoffs, and Lamar struggled in the playoffs specifically, so we need to see more from him in the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, it's just like a lot of it comes down to matchups. We'll see what happens. Like, who does Baltimore end up playing? I don't know. So we'll see. Same thing with San Francisco. Well, I feel like maybe there's more of a chance Baltimore could screw up than the 49ers, unless the 49ers have significant injuries.
Yeah, because the first round game for the 49ers could be like Philadelphia or New Orleans, and I just think they're going to roll them. And, but by the same token, Baltimore could be playing in the first game. They could be playing like Jacksonville, Cleveland, or Houston, which Cleveland is, we agree on Cleveland. They're feisty. So yeah, I think San Francisco they have the gap is just higher than every place else. All right. Anything else on the state of the NFL playoffs before we move on? We've just shit on everybody. So but by the way, that being said, it means the playoffs are going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to have a clue what's going to happen, which makes me want to yell at the NFL. They're going to put a playoff game on Peacock and they're going to put a playoff game on Monday night. Like, screw you, NFL. Honestly, why do you do this to us? Anyway, all right. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think we've sufficiently shit on everybody, so I think we're good.
So I just wanted to I want to do like Clark on Saturday Night Live when Seth Meyers used to host the news. They used to do this segment called Really with Seth Meyers and sometimes it was Seth Meyers and Amy Poehler or whatever it was. Really, and they would just be like, "Really, you did this? Really?" And I think this is perfectly appropriate for Aaron Rodgers today. because Aaron Rodgers came out and said, "You know what? I didn't tell them that they had to activate me. I was fine with going on IR. You know, it was totally cool. I never said, you know, I didn't make them do that. Like, you know, when a week before he said, you know what? I mean, it was kind of ridiculous to think I was going to be 100% healthy. And it's like, really? Really, Aaron Rodgers? So this whole comeback thing is honestly complete nonsense. You've been telling us the whole time for months, I'm coming back in December. Oh, no, I'm coming back. Absolutely, I'm coming back. Well, I mean, it was kind of unrealistic to think I was going to come back. Really? Like, and then oh, I didn't tell the Jets to do that. The Jets have literally done every single thing you've asked them to do. And you're like, well, I didn't tell them to do that. I had nothing to do with it. You take no responsibility for any of your nonsense. Okay. And then you sit back and act like, what do you mean? I don't understand. I didn't cause this problem. It's like, okay, yeah, you did when you lied about the vaccines. Like, it's just, he's totally blameless. No self-awareness at all. Okay. And it's just like, again, really, Aaron Rodgers? Really? You thought, oh, I'm fine. I don't need to take responsibility for anything or admit, you know, when I was wrong or that I was making stuff up or just saying stuff just to get attention. I don't need to respond to any of that. Why are you guys all upset? I don't understand. You know, so I'm tired of Aaron Rodgers with his nonsense. And Nick Wright did a fantastic job on First Things First. It was a hilarious segment where he just explains all of the things that Aaron Rodgers has been disingenuous about. You're disingenuous about your retirement status. You're disingenuous about your vaccination status. You're disingenuous about the team bringing in coaches and players just because you asked them to. You're disingenuous about your comeback, which you were disingenuous about the entire time. So that's all I got to say. That's all I want to say about that. Really, Aaron Rodgers, like, honestly, I'm tired. Your act is tired. I'm completely done with you. And this idea that this is just going to go, everything's going to go great now because he's going to play for the Jets next year. Good freaking luck. I cannot wait. That is going to be great comedy and great content for everybody. I cannot wait. So really, Aaron Rodgers, you're an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I mean, I'm not surprised, you know, because at this point we know who Aaron Rodgers is. We've got plenty of past history to look back on and go, yeah, this makes sense. This is totally within Aaron Rodgers' character. This is the kind of stuff he would do. Just to deny that. I mean, I remember one time, when was this? He had won his second straight MVP, right? And so then during the offseason, he was doing a podcast with somebody, and I think he was talking about, you know, I forget what they were all talking about on the podcast. They might have been talking about psychedelics or something. And he was like, yeah, no, I'm not surprised by this. I mean, I visualized this, you know, I figured this would happen, you know, because I could look ahead and see, you know, what was going on. So I'm not surprised at all by having this level of success. And it just felt like just that. And then the podcast host was like, yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, I visualized everything. Everything I got right now, all my success, I mean, I saw this beforehand, so I knew this was coming. So this is not a surprise to me at all. And I'm just like, oh my God, you should rename the podcast to like the Hubris Podcast. I mean, good Lord. I mean, how full of yourself do you have to be? Like, oh no, I just expected this. I mean, that's just, it's really off-putting. It doesn't, like, when you hear that, unless you're also someone who's like wildly successful, you hear that and it's just like, oh God, what a douchebag. Like, you just kind of, you think that it's like, who talks like that? So yeah, I'm not surprised by it at all. It kind of, at this point, I'm not upset about it or anything, because it's just like, well, this is how this guy is. So I'm just, you know, this is what we expect at this point, you know. And he's kind of off on his own. And also, it's, you know, Colin Cowherd always brings up that, you know, he's not married, he doesn't have any kids. And I think that's a valid point. I mean, you know, when you're married, yeah, you got responsibilities and other stuff. When he's a single guy, he can do whatever the hell he wants. There's nobody holding him accountable. There's nobody like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this. Maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe, you know, you should be a little more genuine when you're talking to people. It's like, no, there's no one to hold him accountable. He can just go off and do whatever the hell he wants.
Well, I know women
in 2023.
That's right. I know women will tell you if a dude's 40 years old and never been married, red flag. You know, I know I've heard that before. Well, I don't know whether it's accurate or not, but I know I've heard it before. Yeah. I just the guy is just too much. But honestly, Clark, I was thinking the other day, like, well, how come Kyrie Irving has just not been talking about current events for like the past year? Like, what's going on there? And I really think it's because like Mark Cuban and the Mavericks are like, okay, you can talk basketball. Anything else? Press conference over. I really think they're just like, you know what? They're limiting what they let Kyrie Irving say because he just gets himself into trouble, and everybody and the team has to deal with it. Aaron Rodgers, the Jets are just like, yeah, go ahead, Aaron, talk as much as you want. It's just like this is not a good idea because how long until he steps in it, until he says something dumb about some group, and completely the Jets have to apologize for him. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
that's a good point. I mean, that could literally happen at any point. I mean, whether it's during the rest of his career or when he's retired or whatever. I mean, that could easily happen. I wouldn't be surprised at all by that. At this point, I'm not sure. I mean, the Jets are just a desperate franchise. They are so freaking. It's kind of like the Browns, although the Browns seem to have kind of turned things around a little bit. But I mean, they still signed Deshaun Watson, so that's still hanging over him. But yeah, the Jets are just a desperate franchise, and this is what happens. You just basically go, all right, well, we need this, so we're just gonna tie ourselves to this guy, and he can just do whatever he wants. Just please don't leave us. Just stay here. Just don't leave us. We won't try to upset you or anything, or make you more accountable, or tell you, hey, maybe don't do that, because we need you so bad.
Yeah. So anyway, so we'll move on from that, and so this became a hot button issue this week, Clark. Russell Wilson got benched. It came out that he was benched the other day, and they're going to play Jared Stidham in the Broncos' last two games. And I mean, and the story with this is that Denver, we've been saying it the whole season, Clark. Russell Wilson is not playing well. If any other quarterback were playing like this, any quarterback that we have, at least some kind of expectations for, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Tua, whatever, any of those quarterbacks were playing like that, they'd be getting ripped apart because of, you can't win with them playing like that. So they benched him, and basically, Clark, this comes down to the contract. Like we knew in the first 4 or 5 games of the season that it would be the best thing for Denver to do would be to move on from Russell Wilson at the end of the season, because they would take a cap hit for a year or two, and then they could get out of most of the contract. So that's basically what's happening here. And so there's a couple of points I want to go over. Number one, there seems to be a complete misunderstanding of this, especially in the sports media. Russell Wilson is not playing well. That's not a debate. Okay, that's not up for we can't debate whether he's playing well or not. He's not. Okay, don't show me statistics. Watch the games. Okay, he has the 30th depth of or air yards per attempt in the NFL. Okay, so basically he throws the ball a shorter distance than 2 other guys in the league. That's pretty bad. Okay, most of his passes, as I've been joking, but it's serious, are 4-yard passes to running backs after Russell Wilson has run around for 3 or 4 seconds. Okay, then he completes 2 or 3 passes a game down the field to Cortland Sutton, and that's it. And he's throwing for like 200 yards a game or somewhere around there. Okay, this idea that he's playing well and they should keep him as a starter is complete bullshit. He's not. He can't make the plays that you need to win games consistently. Now, if they play that game they won against Buffalo on Monday night earlier this year, where it's 22-21, and the defense plays really well, and somebody misses a field goal, and whatever, yeah, then maybe they can win games they can eke out games like that if everything goes their way and the defense plays well. But it's not. I don't understand the people who are acting like, oh no, they were winning. I'm like, okay, they were 7-8, and the other thing is, Russell Wilson cannot run Sean Payton's offense. We saw that the first 4 or 5 weeks, which is why Sean Payton dumbed down the offense to make it remedial enough for Russell Wilson to be able to run it, at some kind of, level. Whether it's an acceptable level or not, we could debate, but, to allow him to just be able to do it. And when you watch the games, there are all kinds of plays where Russell Wilson drops back, stands there, and then takes off out of the pocket. does not hit receivers when they're open, makes bad decisions. Okay, so we got to just be honest about all of that. Okay, and Denver, like they basically, I guess it came out that earlier this season they asked him to basically move back a date on his contract when the injury guarantee would kick in, right? So Denver was basically saying, hey, can you just be a little flexible on this? You're still going to get your money. Can you be a little flexible on this so we can figure out what we're going to do? Okay, Russell didn't want to do that. That's his right. It's his contract. He's allowed to do what he wants to do. But that's not insulting. Players get asked to restructure their deals all the time, especially high-priced quarterbacks. It's not unusual. That happens all the time in the NFL. So it's not insulting to ask him to do that. But the biggest thing that I just can't get by is, oh, Russell Wilson's being disrespected. Just a tremendous disrespect. The way he's being treated is just completely disrespectful. Okay, all we've seen is Sean Payton has yelled at him a few times on the sideline. Okay, and what? Why is and he got benched? He got benched because of his play, right? He believes this is how bad it is. Denver believes there's a better chance that they're going to win with Jarrett Stidham over Russell Wilson. Okay? And they already know they're not going to be able to trade Russell Wilson. The only thing they can do is just cut him. Okay? And when nobody reaches out to trade for him, which is what's going to happen, no one's going to trade for that contract. When no one trades for him, okay, then we'll know for sure. Boy, will you still think Sean Payton's disrespectful to Russell Wilson then? So I don't understand the disrespect thing. I don't get it. It's ridiculous. He got benched. Quarterbacks get benched. When you don't play well enough, you get benched. That's how it works. Okay? The 49ers moved on from Joe Montana. Okay? They were like, you know what? We think you're kind of past your prime. We're going to go with Steve Young. Okay? That's a guy who had 4 Super Bowls. Okay, so I'm sorry, this is a bottom line deal. And he was not playing well. He was not getting it done. I just don't understand. Maybe you can explain it to me, Clark. Why? What is the deal where everyone's like, oh my God, how could they disrespect him this way? This is classless and whatever. I just don't get it. So can you explain it?
Well, yeah. So I did want to comment on, how good is Russell Wilson? And you kind of talked about it a little bit, because stats can be really deceptive. So, for instance, one of the things I looked at, Russell Wilson is currently 7th in the league in his passer rating, right? And so that's like, well, that sounds like it must be pretty good, right? I mean, 7th in the league, that's top 10. But also, if you look at it, so passer rating is a flawed stat people have done videos about that and talked about it. ESPN several years ago came out with a stat called QBR, which is sort of similar to passer rating, but it tries to account for basically the context of how the quarterback's playing. So, like, if you have, a lot of success in critical moments in the game or late in the game, that matters more than stuff you did in the first quarter. Or if you throw a short pass and the guy runs for 50 yards, that's not as important as you throwing a ball that goes 50 yards and the receiver catches it. So anyway, Russell Wilson's QBR is 50.6, which is 21st in the league, which by my estimation, that's probably about right. Because what we've seen with Russell Wilson is there's a lot of short passes. He's not throwing for a bunch of yards. He will make some throws downfield. And by the way, his deep ball is still pretty good. It's not like it happens all the time, but it feels like, once or twice a game you see a deep ball down the field and it's like, oh, that was nice, and he'll run around a little bit and he'll make some plays here and there, but he's not as spry as he used to be. He's not as quick or twitchy, whatever you want to say. And so, yeah, he's not as good as he used to be. Excuse me. So, it seems like, basically Russell Wilson is an average to below average QB who every now and then makes, he'll make a few plays that are maybe a little above average. I've seen him on the runs throw some touchdown passes, which were pretty nice. But that's picking one thing out of a bunch of other plays that were really not spectacular at all. And I was looking through some of the results of some of his games, like some of the box scores, and I even went back and watched highlights of some of those games. And it's really, I mean, it's like for the people who think that Russell Wilson is really good, like, well, can you explain this to me? So they lose the first week of the season, they lose to Las Vegas 17-16. Okay. He throws he drops back to pass 34 times, only gains 177 yards. Okay. I don't think he had any, I'm not sure if he had any touchdowns. Yeah, he didn't have any touchdowns in that game. And remember, they're playing Las Vegas. They could only score 16 points. I mean, literally, you get one more field goal, you win that game. Against the Commanders, they were up by a bunch, and then they let the game get. They let Washington come back, and Russ was, what was he, 18-32, 308 yards. So that's the one of two games this year where he threw for over 300 yards, and they lost the game. And then of course there's the Miami game, which we can, I don't know, we don't need to get into that. They lost 70-20. Then there was the Bears game, and that's one of the comebacks he had because they were down by a bunch, right? But one of the touchdowns that was scored in that game during the comeback was scored by their defense. Okay? And, another thing to point out is, he's throwing all these short passes, and so his completion percentage is actually pretty good, right? And then they're like, oh, well, he's not throwing interceptions either. Well, that's deceptive too. He's not letting the ball go. I don't know if if he doesn't see it, or he's trying to protect his touchdown interception ratio. I don't know what's going on. But, and then you look back at, some of the other games, like they lost to the Patriots. There's no excuse for losing to the Patriots right now. That's just kind of embarrassing. Houston, that was a game they probably could have won. Houston had massive injuries in that game, and he threw 3 interceptions. Russell Wilson threw 3 interceptions.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't mean to cut you off there, but I just think, I think Russell Wilson has achieved some kind of stature where I guess the sports TV shows and the national media, they don't want to criticize him because he had such a great career up to this point. And because I don't understand the wanting to come to Russell Wilson's defense. And it's just like, and then I'm listening to these shows, and I think it was on Speak on FS1. They're saying, well, why? Well, if they're asking him to redo his contract, well, they weren't really trying to win. And it's like,
oh yeah, I heard that too.
It's like, actually, no, they were trying their best to win. It's just, this is the only way they could do it. And then I heard Dan Orlovsky say, well, he's played like a top 10 to 12 quarterback. It's like, no, he's not. First of all, not only is that not accurate, number one, but we've talked about this before, Clark. There's only 6 great quarterbacks in the NFL. So, I mean, you can pick the ones you want. I'm not going to go through the names, but there's basically 5 or 6 of them that are elite in the NFL. Everybody else, so you can be in the top 10. That doesn't mean you're a great quarterback.
Well, and in fact, I'll say this. As I was making notes on this yesterday, I actually tried to go, okay, you're saying he's a top 12 quarterback. Okay, fine. So the challenge now is to name 12 quarterbacks who I think are better than him, who a lot of people would agree with. Okay, Lamar Jackson, Matt Stafford, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott. Hell, I'll put Tua above him. If you want to put Mahomes in there, you still can. I mean, Josh Allen you could put in there. Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. I was going to say Baker Mayfield, but I think I've gotten to 12 there. Oh, C.J. Stroud. How you can put C.J. Stroud in there? He was out for a couple of weeks there, but he's played really well. And the reason that I'm putting the reason I'm putting all those quarterbacks there is, well, not all of them, but most of them. I mean, even Jalen Hurts today, they put up 31 points. They lost the game. Do you see Russell Wilson doing that? Do you see Russell Wilson winning shootouts? That's not what he was doing this year. Do you see Jalen Hurts is still, like, I have criticisms of how he's played this year, but Jalen Hurts can raise his level of play. He can help his team win games that are really ugly. Russell Wilson doesn't really do that. The defense has to play well, and Russell he can't throw interceptions. And then I love on Speak, they were talking about, they came to him about the contract after the Chiefs game. He threw 3 touchdowns in that game. Did you watch that game? 3 touchdowns. Yeah, fine. He threw 3 touchdowns. The defense basically totally, like, I was looking at it again. So his stat line for that game, the second time they played the Chiefs, 12 of 19 for 114 yards. Okay, his average, yards per pass, 6 yards. Okay, so you're trying to tell me that means he's an elite quarterback just because he beat the Chiefs? And are we ignoring that the Chiefs are, like, I don't want to say a dumpster fire, but the Chiefs are a mess this year?
Yeah, I think I don't understand it. I don't understand why everyone's treating Sean Payton like he's a crazy person because he's the first guy ever who's yelled at his quarterback. Like, have you guys watched football at all? Like, how old are you people that you haven't seen any games where people get yelled at? If you don't do your job well enough, they replace you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's just ridiculous to me that we're acting like this is just this horrible level of disrespect. It's garbage.
Right, and
So
let me comment on the first question you would ask me about, what do I think about the way that the media has reacted to this, essentially. So I'm always really suspicious of the idea that we need to be careful how we treat people based on their past achievements. And also, again, people are acting like it's some outlandish thing that the Denver Broncos did. What are they really trying to do? They're trying to protect their interests, which they have a right to do. They asked him to do something. He said no. I also heard this. They said, "Why are you asking him to do that after a win? What do you want him to do? Ask him to do it after a loss?" To me, that seems like a perfect time to ask him to do it because hey, you just won. You're in good. You guys are starting to turn things around. Um, and by the way, Russ said no. By the way, that's what I would have done if I was in his position. I don't have any problem with him saying that. Like he got them to sign that. He got them to offer him the contract. He signed it. Like they signed it. So yeah, you should. Tua should, or not Tua. Russ should try to protect his interests, and the Broncos should try to protect theirs. I don't see where the animosity or like this is totally uncalled for. How the hell can you do this? And then also people are talking about, well, they threatened to bench him. Is that wrong? Well, no. I mean, the coaches are the ones who make roster decisions. They get to decide who's going to start or if they're going to pull somebody out based on the way they're playing. And then you mentioned, I thought it was hilarious, you mentioned Joe Montana basically got traded. There are numerous examples of that kind of stuff happening throughout the history of the NFL, not just in the NFL, but also professional sports. I mean, Brett Favre with the Packers, I mean, I know that essentially he retired, but it was basically like they told him they wanted to move forward with Aaron Rodgers and he didn't want to play for another team. So he basically was kind of forced into retiring. And then, of course, he came back and there was that whole mess with that. Jimmy Johnson wanted to get rid of Dan Marino. He criticized Dan Marino when he was the coach of the Dolphins. Dak Prescott just had the whole contract dispute with the Cowboys a few years ago. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. Belichick wanted to replace Tom Brady with Jimmy Garoppolo. The team also, they wouldn't give Tom Brady the extension that he wanted, and this is after winning, 5 Super Bowls at that point. There's tons of examples of this stuff, and so I just don't. Peyton Manning got cut. Okay, like what? So it's like, oh, they can't ask Russell Wilson to restructure his contract, and I've seen elite quarterbacks restructure their contracts all the time. I don't know if the quarterback's idea it's the quarterback's idea or it's the team's idea, but yeah, that whole thing that this is disrespectful and this is wrong and they're not committed to winning. Are you kidding me? Like Sean Payton's had to basically like rack his brain to figure out, okay, how do I win with Russell Wilson the way that he plays, given the system that I want to run? Okay, and they did figure out how to play well enough. The defense got better over the year. They're not committed to winning. What, you can't walk and chew gum at the same time? You can't be trying to win games right now and also be thinking about the future, especially when it comes to Russell Wilson's gigantic contract. And then just the last thing I'll say is I was listening to Pro Football Talk, so Mike Florio and Chris Sims, and Chris Sims, had it down. He's basically like, it took Sean Payton a while to figure out how best to play with Russ, and then it got better, but then it plateaued, and then it didn't get any better. And they were really kind of simplifying stuff, and that's why Sean Payton was talking about it with the armband thing. And then, look, if you want to say that it was Sean Payton like completely lost control when he was yelling at Russell Wilson during the Lions game, I'm not necessarily going to disagree with you. But I think and Mike Florio had this down. It feels like what happened there was Sean Payton has been, coaching Russell Wilson this whole time and trying to get the most out of him and trying to get him to play within his system. And it just reached a point where it's like, dude, how many times have I told you to, do X, Y, or Z and you're not doing it? Like, what the hell? What else am I supposed to do? And so it just reaches a point where you're like exasperated, like I'm squeezing as much as I possibly can out of this. There's nothing else left. So, yeah, I mean, I heard some on Speak. They were also saying, Russell Wilson's trying to build. I mean, last year they only won a few games. This year they've got 7. Maybe next year you get 10. I'm like, Russell Wilson's won a Super Bowl before. We're supposed to wait around for him to, make the playoffs? Like, what are we talking about here?
Right. Yeah, they didn't say Denver did not intend. This wasn't intentional by Denver. You know what? We're going to treat this guy like crap because we're bored. No, because they don't know what else to do. So yeah, the media is wrong on this. You guys, all with disrespect, I'm usually not that definitive on this, but you guys are just flat out wrong. Like there's no evidence to suggest what anybody in the media is saying, and why won't anybody just be honest about it?
Well,
instead it's nonsense.
Yeah, and people are, they're saying, well, he was winning games. Okay. I understand. Yes, technically the objective is to win games. Okay. But you also have to ask, is what we're doing sustainable? Okay. Tim Tebow was winning games, but that clearly wasn't sustainable, so that's why they went and got Peyton Manning. Okay. And you're watching the way Russell Wilson's playing, like, yeah, basically, there's a certain way that you have to play. Okay. And if he gets outside of that, if he throws an interception, or he throws, a couple interceptions or something like that, or the offense just can't really move the ball at all, their defense doesn't play as well, you're going to lose. And that's basically been proven throughout the season. So, yeah, I don't really get it. And then the other thing is, it's like, well, they're trying to build with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's a middle-aged quarterback. He's in his mid-30s. You think he's going to get better all of a sudden? Like, right. No, he's not.
Yeah, and they signed him. He's on a gigantic contract that he's completely unqualified for at this point. So no, I'm sorry. The team's going to do what they have to do. I hate to, So anyway, we'll move on. We'll move on from that. It's one of those things I just didn't understand. Another thing I didn't understand is Florida State played Georgia in the Orange Bowl yesterday, and Georgia beat them, I think, 63-3 or something like that.
Yep.
Which anybody with half a brain could have seen that coming. Florida State had 29 guys out who chose not to play in the game, were going to the NFL or whatever, or transferred or whatever. So they
don't want to play in a meaningless exhibition game.
Exactly. So Florida State was basically down to, they basically had barely enough guys to suit up to play the game. They had 53 guys on scholarship for the game. That was it. So they get blown out, whatever. Florida State doesn't have all of their good players. Of course, they got beat really badly. And it just leads to this argument where people go, and it just made me laugh. Like, after they announced the playoff and Florida State wasn't in, you know what? Florida State's going to go out and they're going to prove it against Georgia, blah, blah, blah. And I just thought it's one of those knee-jerk things that people do. Well, they're going to go, this is wrong, and they're going to go make it right, And I was laughing at the time because I'm like, it's a meaningless game. No one cares. And so, Florida State gets blown out, but that game literally means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. And so I don't understand people trying to make arguments. Well, it's like I'm watching people on Twitter. Well, where's Florida State complaining now? Where are all the people that said it was unfair before they lost to Georgia? And I'm like, okay. And as Reese Davis says on ESPN, the result of the game doesn't prove or disprove your selection. Okay? Whatever the result is, I don't care if Florida State beat them by 60. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't mean anything. I feel bad for Florida State. I still feel like they got screwed. I think the committee did the best that they could do in that situation, but I still think Florida State got screwed, and I understand the players being upset about it. So there's a couple things on bowl games in general. I read this, Danny Cannell was putting on Twitter yesterday, bowl games are broken, we need to do something else, blah, blah, blah. Well, number one, bowl games were not intended to be a TV product. Okay? Bowl games were invented as a reward for the players and the coaches and the team and the school for a good season. That was the point of the games. Like, they did not intend, these games were not, we're going to get a whole bunch of people to watch this on TV. That's what sports is now. That's not what it used to be. So for bowl games, by the way, I don't have any problem with them playing bowl games. Go ahead. But they're never going to get a good TV audience for them. Okay? Because they're completely meaningless, and a lot of them are bad, especially with all the guys opting out now. In this situation in general, stop trying to draw conclusions from bowl games, people. Like they literally, they're exhibition games. They're for the players. They're not for you. So when Danny Cannell complains, oh, what are we doing? Like we shouldn't have to watch these, blah 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 blah. It's like, you don't have to watch it. Turn it off. Like, if you
Yeah,
don't like it, turn it off. That's not what it's for. It's not meant to be this amazing TV show. Now, I know sports, the whole point of sports now is that they all make money off TV. I get it. And we're going to have a 12-team playoff next year, and that's going to make some of this easier. But there's 41 bowl games. There's no possible way we can make 41 bowl games good television products, especially when you've got Jacksonville State and Marshall and UTSA in them. Like, it's never going to happen. So, that game, the Florida State Georgia game, doesn't mean anything. Like, get out of here. And then there's the most ridiculous take was Colin Cowherd saying Florida State, they showed a lack of leadership. The conference and the school, and they got all mad, and then the players followed their lead. Okay. First of all, I'm just going to say that's complete nonsense. The players are not listening to what everybody else is doing. The players are looking out for themselves, which is exactly what they should be doing. So this argument that Florida State was so mad that they decided, well, we're going to all opt out of the game because we're so upset about the selection committee. I mean, that's the most far-fetched, ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. Most of the guys they're transferring to other schools because they think there's a better opportunity. There's a whole bunch of guys they had going that are going to go to the NFL, so they're getting ready for that. Like, I really don't think the ACC and Florida State complaining and trying to get politicians involved to help their case or whatever cause the players to all go, you know what, we're not playing then, screw it. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. If you found a player who that's the reason he's not playing in the game because of that, then let me know. We'd love to talk to him. But I severely doubt that's the case.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of the Colin Cowherd complaint, he's basically saying they shouldn't have been whining and complaining or whatever about not getting selected for the playoff. Okay, yeah. Did they talk about it? Sure. Did the ACC talk about it? Did FSU coaches and players talk about it? Sure. Of course they did. They talked about that they got screwed and it was unfair. Well, let me just tell you that the 14, I've supported the 14 playoff, but I can even admit it's unfair. The whole system's not, the 14 playoff was not meant to be fair. Okay. And that's going to cause people to complain when they get screwed over, which, as I've said before, I think is part of what makes the system great because it's emotional and generates interest. But are people, do teams and coaches and players get pissed off about it if they get passed over for selection into the playoff when they feel like they have a right to go? I mean, yeah, I understand why they're doing it. They have a right to complain. So what? And by the way, complaining about not getting selected for a playoff or the BCS or not getting ranked high enough, pre-BCS, that was built into college football. That's part of what people do. And then you're saying that causes them to play poorly in a bowl game? Like, that's ridiculous. And it's not like it's not like they don't have a good argument. They do have a good argument. They're saying it was unfair. It is unfair. I just got through saying that. It is an unfair system. So people are going to complain when they get screwed over. I think that's totally fine. And as far as, another thing that I just wanted to point out, it's really funny coming from Colin Cowherd that he's saying this is childish behavior. Like really? Or this shows a lack of acting like an adult or being, he didn't use the word honorable, but I think you could kind of file that in there too. And it's like, you're the same guy who's been brushing off the fact that Michigan cheated and being like, oh, it's no big deal, whatever. Well, acting like an adult could also be interpreted as maybe when you do something wrong or you break the rules or you cheat, you could admit it and apologize or something. Or just be like, yeah, we did this, sorry. That could be interpreted as acting like an adult, but you don't have a problem with that. And as far as, saying that they're not acting like adults, so they're acting, they're displaying like childish behavior. No. You want to know what childish behavior? Childish behavior is not transferring, given the way that the schedule is set up, that if you want to transfer, you got to do it like right after the season's over. Okay. Or not playing in a meaningless exhibition game because you're going to get drafted, or just not playing in a meaningless game because you don't want to get hurt and hurt the rest of your college football or possibly pro football career. Okay. As far as acting childish, you know what acting childish is? What we were just talking about with Aaron Rodgers. Okay. Ja Morant. Um, I just thought of this too. Yesterday, Jimmy Johnson finally got put into the Ring of Honor for the Dallas Cowboys. Couldn't you have done that like, I don't know, 15 fucking years ago? I mean, that seems kind of childish to me. I mean, you put Darren Woodson in there too already. You put Troy Aikman, you put Michael Irvin, you put Emmitt Smith in there. Like, hello, like how long does it take to put? I mean, the guy won 2 Super Bowls. So, in terms of Colin saying, "Oh, this is childish behavior," I can give you plenty of examples of childish behavior, but FSU players sitting out that game is clearly not an example of that.
No. The way the ACC acted and the president of the school and the coach are all just going crazy about it. I mean, I get it, but that's I just think accusing them. Well, that's a lack of leadership. Of fighting for your players is a lack of leadership. Like
Exactly. No,
I
it's not.
just no,
No,
I just don't.
the
I don't.
SEC advocates for its interests when teams in the SEC feel like they should get in. They'll go on TV and talk about it. I feel like my team should get in, and if we don't, then we disagree with this, and whatever. That's not being childish or complaining. That's advocating for. That's being an adult. You advocate for yourself and for your interests.
Yeah. So these bowl games are completely meaningless. The good thing is we're getting a 12-team playoff, so we're going to go to where we only watched 3 bowl games. Well, I don't know if you count the championship as a bowl game, but I guess I will for this. But we go from 3 bowl games, Clark, or three games that we're going to care about to 11 games that we're going to care about next season. So hopefully that'll be a lot of fun. But before we get out of here, we were going to do a little championship preview between the college football playoff semifinals. So first game between Alabama and Michigan. Michigan, last time I checked, was like a 1.5 point favorite. And Clark, I got to be honest, I'm getting a lot of weird vibes about this game because everybody on TV, everyone you talk to, like, oh, I'm picking Alabama. Like everyone's like, oh, I think Alabama's going to win, but yet Michigan is still favored in the game. So I mean, I'm picking. Well, here's how I feel about it. I'm picking Alabama. I think Alabama's probably going to win. I'm rooting for Michigan. I really want Michigan to win this. I'd love Harbaugh to get into the championship game, and I want Michigan to be legitimate. I want them to, be the team that we think they can be, and go get this done. I just feel like in this game, I think this will be a close game at halftime, and I think Alabama will pull away in the second half, just because they just have Alabama. I think has a little bit better athletes, not necessarily up front, but on the outside, and so I think that's probably what's going to happen. But I also feel like, Clark, I'm going to be sitting there in the third quarter, going, I'm a dumbass. Michigan was really good the whole year. I'm an idiot. What am I doing? I just feel like that's what's going to happen in this game because it doesn't make any sense that Michigan is still favored even a day before the game. I just can't figure it out. And I want to see if Michigan can throw the ball and, makes JJ McCarthy can make something happen and see if Michigan can look like, a well-rounded team.
Oh,
So I think I think Michigan can compete with Alabama up front. I think on the offensive and defensive lines they're good enough, but I think having Jalen Milroe in there is going to be a problem for them, and I think that him.
that's the central issue of the game, right? I think that how that plays out will kind of decide the game. Because I feel like that's where we have the question with Michigan. It's like are they going to be able to hold up? Like, are they going to be able to run the ball the way they want to run the ball? If they can do that, and assuming they don't have to be in like a shootout or something where they have to throw the ball a ton, then you feel like they can be in the game. Can they compete the whole game? And we have these questions because usually with Big Ten teams, this is what we see. They just, over the course of the game, they can't really compete. Except for Ohio State has done it. We haven't really seen Michigan do it, though. So people are apprehensive. And also, Harbaugh's bowl record is 1-6 or 2-7, whatever it is. So, yeah, it's just, maybe I'll be totally wrong. I'm picking Alabama to win the game. Like, I think they may win, like, comfortably by, like, 10 points or something. But I could be wrong. Again, like I said, I think the central issue is that upfront stuff. Who kind of wins that over the course of the game. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it would be pretty cool to have Michigan in the national championship game.
Yeah, I mean, but I think it's going to be a competitive game because look, Alabama has had teams run the ball on them really well.
Right,
Auburn ran for 200 yards. They've had teams run the ball on them. So, and this is not a great Alabama team. Like
right,
Jalen Milroe makes mistakes. Like he's not perfect. Sometimes they work out for him. Sometimes they don't. So I just don't think either team is going to be able to blow the other one out because I don't think either team's good enough to blow the other one
right.
out, and neither team's offense is really super explosive. So I just so we'll see. So yeah, I think it may come down to up front and who can actually run the ball. It feels
Yeah,
simplistic, but that's probably the case. And I think JJ McCarthy's going to have to run the ball a lot for Michigan to generate offense. I think
right.
he's going to have to be really good in the game for them to eventually win it. But
Nick
I think it'll
Saban tends to struggle against like teams when their quarterback can actually run around and do stuff. So yeah,
yep.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah. In the other game, I mean, Clark, I like Texas to beat Washington, and I like Texas to win the whole thing. I think Texas has what it's going to take. I think they're good. They're as good up front as anybody else, and they have one of the best play callers in college football. You know, working with them. I think Quinn Ewers is a pretty good quarterback. So I think they're. Yeah, I just think they're going to be really good up front. I think they're going to be difficult for Washington to just consistently move the ball, especially if they want to run the ball. I think it's going to be really hard to do against Texas. But that being said, I'm not saying Texas is going to win easily. I think this game is high scoring. I think this will be the more fun game to watch, and I think you cannot count Washington out. The way Washington can throw the ball and the receivers that they are never out of a game. So, we've doubted Washington before and they've come through the whole season. So, but if you're asking me to pick the game, I mean, I like Texas and I think it's going to be competitive and down to the end.
I think this has a chance to be the best 14 playoff we've had. Like I think all three games could be really awesome. Like now maybe the Michigan Alabama game is different from the Texas Washington game where it's not, just a shootout, but I think all three games have the potential to be really really entertaining. So yeah, I'm really like Texas and Washington. I haven't watched enough of either of them, so I don't know. But I just to me I'm really fascinated to find out what happens because I mean, really, you can kind of make a case for all these teams to win the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Oh,
So that's
all four
yeah,
teams could win the whole thing. No
yeah. So
doubt about
that's
it.
that's what makes it really fascinating. So I'm really excited about it. And again, well, like I said, I could be totally wrong about Michigan and Alabama. I need to see it first before I go. Okay, fine, yeah, Michigan. I'm not convinced about what you've done against the Big Ten.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, Michigan definitely has the most the narrative on Michigan is going to have the wildest fluctuation
Yep.
based on what happens in this game. Because if Alabama loses, well, all right, this wasn't that great of an Alabama team. If they win, it's amazing because it wasn't that great of an Alabama team. For Texas and Washington, it's just a great story of one season. But
Yeah.
for Michigan, this is and this could be the last hurrah for Harbaugh. He could be going to the NFL.
Possibly. We'll see.
We don't know what's going to happen there. So anyway, yeah, but I think it's going to be two good games, and I think hopefully it'll be be a good championship game.
Yeah.
All right. That'll be it for us. We'll be back on here to drown in our tears about the Dolphins next week. Hopefully they
We'll
find
talk
some
about
way.
the playoff games, the college
Yep.
football playoff games,
Right.
obviously.
Hopefully Miami finds a way to win, but I don't feel great about it, Clark. Don't feel great.
Me neither.
All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, check out all our clips, and everybody have a happy new year.